Welcome to my presentation on minimizing cognitive load for EAL students. What we'll talk about. First, what is cognitive load? Second, why we should care about cognitive load. And third, simple things we can do to help students learn better. Cognitive load in EAL students. Nearly all of our students are EAL students. Even though the students have varying degrees of English, most of them come from a home where English is not their first language. Working in another language takes extra brain power. And because it takes extra brain power to work in another language, it affects their higher order thinking skills. This means it makes things more difficult to complete tasks such as writing essays, engaging in debates, doing computer programming, or solving algebraic reasoning problems. What is cognitive load theory? So cognitive load theory is the mental energy expended to do a task. And as we're learning something new, the cognitive load is greater. So you can think about learning a new sport. When you learn a new sport, you need to remember the rules. If you're playing with a ball, you need to remember how to strike the ball so it goes in the direction you want it to go. You might need to remember where to run, and you're also going to have to monitor the field for the opponent so that you can steer clear of them. At the beginning, it's difficult to do all of these tasks at once because the cognitive load is very high. But as you automatize these skills and get used to them, each of them becomes easier and easier. So here's a graphic that explains cognitive load. You can see at the beginning there's input. So this is information we gain from readings, lectures, videos that we watch. And this first goes into our sensory memory, which is what we hear, see, feel, and stays here for a very short amount of time. With some effort, we can bring this information into our cognitive workspace. You might also have heard this referred to as working memory or short-term memory. Our cognitive workspace can hold 4 to 7 ideas at a time. And that's also affected by our attention, our emotions, and our motivation, which takes up some of our cognitive working space. In order to draw things out of our long-term memory, we have to pull them into our cognitive working space in order to manipulate them to create some kind of output, such as an essay or a presentation such as this. So I'd like to do a quick simulation on cognitive load so you can understand a bit more about how students new to English might feel. So I'd like you to get a pencil and paper. It's very important that you have the pencil and paper with you because this is a writing exercise. You're going to set a timer for 2 minutes. You can go ahead and use your phone. You're going to use your non-dominant hand to write. So if you're right-handed, you'll use your left hand. After you set the timer, you're going to write a sentence summarizing how you feel about the school year. So you can go ahead and pause the computer while you accomplish this task and then rejoin us afterwards. Now that you've completed your sentence, think about these questions. How did you feel physically and emotionally using your non-dominant hand to write a sentence? Look at your handwriting. Is it easy to read? Are the letters clear? Are they of equal size and shape? Are they on the lines? Does it look like any writing samples you've received from students? And also you can look at the content. Did it accurately reflect your thoughts? Did you take any shortcuts expressing your ideas? Did you start with a more complex sentence in mind and shorten it? And how did the time make you feel, knowing that you had limited time? So as you're working with students, you might think about this simulation when they're having difficulty with a task. So thinking about our working memory and that it can handle 4 to 7 tasks at a time, when you were writing, you were required to do more than that. You probably had to remember how to hold a pencil because we're not used to that. You might have had to think about how you form letters, including small letters and capital letters. Maybe you had to think about where to put the paper, what direction you wanted to place it so that it would be comfortable. And maybe it never was comfortable. You had to think of your ideas, and since this was a one-sentence summary, you had to decide what the most important ideas were. Watching the time, you might have felt frustrated, or using your non-dominant hand and the slowness of which you are writing could cause some frustration as well. And your motivation. Maybe you didn't really want to do this, so you thought that you could just skip through it, or you're looking at the clock or doing the minimum possible. You did have to analyze your ideas, like I thought of, so that you have one sentence. And if you met any students with learning difficulties, we talked about how they can handle fewer than 4 to 7 tasks at a time. And if there were any distractions, that also takes a toll on your cognitive load. For example, someone might have entered the room or your phone rang. So EAL students face a great burden on their cognitive load. Students who have not automatized skills, so they have skills that they can do automatically, devote more cognitive energy to things like finding the right word, drawing the shapes of the letters, especially if students are coming from languages that don't use a Roman alphabet, such as Chinese or Korean, Japanese, or Russian. Also, spelling. English comes with a lot of spelling rules that some students may not be used to. English also has a very particular grammar and word order, which may affect the meaning in a sentence. And finally, English has a logic that is different to other cultures. English tends to be very direct, whereas other cultures may circulate around the topic or the argument for quite some time. Additionally, EAL students are affected by other things as well. Being in a new or different culture affects their cognitive load while they're learning the rules of how to exist. Being a first-generation student in a particular school system also affects them. Having to develop new routines and understand those, new processes and procedures for accomplishing tasks in school. And also all of the emotions they feel at moving to a new country or a new school affect them. They might feel anxious because they don't know what to do. They might also feel angry because they've left their friends. They might feel very frustrated because they're used to being a successful student and now they're having trouble. When we think about cognitive load, it affects both core skills and critical thinking. So every task that we do has both extraneous load and intrinsic load, and balance is needed between the two so that students can process the information. So I'll talk a little bit more about extraneous and intrinsic load. So extraneous load is anything that is not part of the learning goal. These can be things like spelling, grammar, vocabulary, subject-specific vocabulary, attention, giving your attention to what is happening with the lesson as opposed to what your friend might be doing or what's happening outside. Also focusing on the task at hand as opposed to wanting to check your phone. Sequencing steps such as in an algebraic problem or a computer programming problem. And also their affect, how they're feeling is part of extraneous load. Intrinsic load is the core elements of the learning task. So this could be algebraic reasoning, it might be the critical thinking that students are applying in essays or debates, or problem solving. If the extraneous and intrinsic load are balanced, you can see that they have some additional cognitive workspace left over to accomplish the task. And this can be devoted to refocusing themselves back on the task, ignoring distractions. If they're not very motivated for a task, they can still spend extra energy to help them complete it. If the extraneous load is too great, you can see they'll have trouble completing the task because they don't have enough space in their working memory. For example, if students have to devote a lot of time to reading, writing, and vocabulary, it will be hard for them to focus on the critical thinking elements. Also, if students are missing core skills, language skills such as reading, writing, spelling, or basic math, they will also have difficulty completing tasks. Or if the challenge is too great or too advanced for their age level as well. This is also important to remember that coming out of a pandemic, many students have missed core skills because of online learning or anxiety or other factors. And so balancing them is going to be very important. So what we can do, we can help to balance the extraneous and intrinsic load so that students can do their best by applying a few simple strategies in the classroom. For example, automatize vocabulary and procedures. This means that students know these words and things by heart, so they don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what they are. So, for you and me, reading and spelling are pretty automatized. We're able to do them mostly without thinking, so we need to help students get to this point as well. We can also teach them strategies, such as mnemonics on how to write paragraphs, such as PEE. We can give thinking time for discussions so that students are able to gather their thoughts and make some notes before they have to discuss and respond. If we pre-assign videos and discussion questions, students can review these the night before so they can come to class in advance and be prepared for whatever activities are required. And we can provide resources and cheat sheets with formulas, processes, sequences, and also vocabulary to help students remember what it is that they need to do. This also helps to limit the cognitive load for completing tasks. And I'll leave you with a final thought. Because EAL students have such difficulties reading and writing, we might consider for ourselves, why are we assigning reading and writing? Can this same information and learning task be accomplished through things such as a slideshow, creating a video or watching a video, doing a voice recording or a mind map? Because these can help students be great critical thinkers while minimizing the troubles that they have with language. If you would like more information, you can see the following references about cognitive load theory